Gu Xunwan's leg was fractured. The injury was quite serious. Her boss took one look at her and said, "It takes 100 days for bones and tendons to heal," then immediately gave her medical leave, telling her to recover before returning to work. As for how she got injured, Gu Xunwan was too embarrassed to say. She was attending a friend's wedding, and when she tried to catch the bridal bouquet, she stepped on a chair. She caught the bouquet, but fell off and fractured her leg. Her colleague was quick to speak up before Gu Xunwan could stop her, revealing the cause of her injury. Feeling humiliated, Gu Xunwan pulled the hospital bed's blanket over her head, pretending to be dead. The attending physician, Wenjian, who had been standing by her bedside, snorted coldly when he heard this. "You really are desperate to get married." Gu Xunwan was immediately annoyed by his tone. She threw off the blanket and glared at Wenjian. "What does it matter to you if I want to get married or not? Is that how a doctor should talk to a patient? I need peace and quiet, okay? Stop making sarcastic remarks at me all the time." Unexpectedly, Wenjian wasn't angry. Instead, he laughed, looking as if he was deliberately trying to provoke her. "I'm not speaking to you as a doctor right now. I'm greeting you as your ex-boyfriend, after all these years." "Greet you, my foot!" Gu Xunwan almost swore, but with one leg out of commission, her anger seemed a bit muted. Already feeling unlucky for ending up in the hospital after breaking her leg while catching the bouquet, she now had to deal with her ex-boyfriend being her attending physician. Gu Xunwan felt like she was cursed lately. Seeing her in such a powerless state, Wenjian chuckled softly and returned to his gentle and warm demeanor as a doctor. "Get some rest." Gu Xunwan rolled her eyes. "I could rest just fine if you weren't here." Wenjian didn't respond and simply walked out of the room. After he left, her colleague eagerly leaned in, clearly excited. "Xunwan, I didn't know you had such a handsome ex-boyfriend. He's totally a white coat god." Hearing her colleague's praise for Wenjian, Gu Xunwan scoffed. "Don't be fooled by his gentle and harmless appearance. There's a saying, all that glitters is not gold. He's the perfect example of a scumbag in disguise." "So, did he cheat on you? Is that why you broke up?" Gu Xunwan nodded firmly, her face full of righteous anger. "He was flirting with other girls while we were dating, using his looks to seduce innocent women. He's basically a real-life chinchimmy, a male vixen." Her colleague, surprised by her indignation, asked, "If you hate him so much, why did you date him in the first place?" At this, Gu Xunwan hesitated, feeling a bit embarrassed. After some awkward shifting, she finally said, "Well, back then I was young and foolish, and I was deceived by his seemingly innocent appearance." The first time Gu Xunwan met Wenjian, the situation was quite similar to this one, though far more dangerous. At the time, she was a freshman in college. Her classmates had organized a barbecue by the river, and after eating, she decided to take a walk along the riverbank by herself. She had walked a fair distance and was about to head back when she saw a little boy drowning. Without a second thought, Gu Xunwan's sense of justice kicked in, and she dove into the water. It took all her strength to push the drowning boy to the shallow area, but in the process, she cramped up and couldn't move. As a wave hit her, she was swept further away by the current. What happened after that, Gu Xunwan didn't remember clearly. All she recalled was waking up to find Wenjian leaning over her, performing CPR. Groggy from having swallowed a stomachful of river water, Gu Xunwan thought someone was taking advantage of her, so she slapped him hard. The crisp sound of the slap startled the group of children watching. Not caring about anything else, Gu Xunwan scrambled to her feet and began cursing Wenjian. "Pervert! Scoundrel! How shameless can you be?" The slap was strong, and Wenjian's face stung with pain. Hearing her accusations, he was so angry he laughed. "Miss, I just saved your life." The children around them chimed in, "Yeah, big sister, this big brother saved you." Gu Xunwan's face fell as conflicting emotions swirled inside her, gratitude for being saved mixed with the frustration of having lost her first kiss this way. She shot him a glance and muttered under her breath, "My first kiss? Just gone like that?" Even though she spoke softly, when John heard her, he rubbed his nose, his ears turning slightly red. As if it wasn't my first kiss too. At that, their eyes met, and a strange tension filled the air. They both stood frozen, but when John's face grew redder. Before Gu Xunwan could figure out why, he stood up, grabbed his backpack from the side, and pulled out a jacket, tossing it to her. Gu Xunwan was stunned for a moment before realizing that her thin t-shirt had become see-through after getting wet, revealing her bra underneath. Now it was Gu Xunwan's turn to blush. In that instant, not only was her first kiss gone, but so was her dignity. Gu Xunwan practically fled in embarrassment. When she got back to where her classmates were barbecuing, her roommate noticed her drenched clothes and the fact that she was wearing a boy's jacket. Their gaze turned teasing. Well, Xunwan, did you sneak off to find a boyfriend behind our backs? Gu Xunwan waved her hand dismissively and pointed toward the river. See that? Her roommate was puzzled. See what? That's the boyfriend I found. Go ahead, call him Dad. Compared to their first intense encounter, Gu Xunwan and Wenjian's second meeting was much more lighthearted. That day, Gu Xunwan was attending a social event on the school's big lawn with her club seniors. Halfway through, one of the seniors received a phone call and left for a while. When he returned, he was accompanied by a group of people, introducing them as his classmates from the medical school. At the time, Gu Xunwan was engrossed in reading a detective manga on her phone. She barely glanced up when the senior greeted everyone, not paying attention to who had arrived. After a while, she felt someone sit down next to her. Then a hand reached over and pointed to a character on her manga screen, saying, "This person is the murderer." Gu Xunwan was instantly annoyed, her mind racing with thoughts. She turned her head sharply, only to find Wenjian sitting beside her. Remembering their awkward first encounter, her face flushed red again, and the words she intended to say got stuck in her throat. Perhaps he had just come from the lab, as there was a faint scent of disinfectant on him. The evening breeze blew by, carrying the smell of osmanthus flowers, and strangely enough, it made Gu Xunwan feel a sense of comfort. She also remembered the incident where she had fallen into the river. Since she had fled in embarrassment, she hadn't even thanked him properly. Gathering her thoughts, Gu Xunwan looked at him and said, "Thanks for saving me last time. Oh, and I've already washed your clothes. They're in my dorm. I'll get them for you later." When Jean glanced around and suggested, "How about you get them now? I've been in the lab all day, and I'm a bit tired. I'd like to head back early to rest." Gu Xunwan, who had already been bored enough to read manga on her phone, saw this as a good excuse. While no one was paying attention, she and Wenjian quietly sneaked away. She went to her dorm, fetched his clothes, and ran back down to give them to him. Wenjian took the clothes and turned to leave. But after just a few steps, he stopped, turned back to her, and asked, "Hey, do you want to grab a late-night snack?" The clean-cut, confident young man stood under the soft glow of the street lamp, flashing her a broad, carefree smile. At that moment, Gu Xunwan wasn't sure what came over her. Perhaps she was dazzled by his looks, but she ended up going with him for that late-night snack. Later, when they were officially dating, Gu Xunwan recalled that evening and asked Wenjian, "When we were at that lawn social, it was only the second time we'd met. Plus, it was dark there. How did you recognize me so quickly? Were you already scheming something?" When John put down the book he was reading, looked at her with affectionate eyes, and gently brushed a hand through her hair. "I admit I was interested in you, but I recognized you at the lawn because you hadn't washed your hair that day. It was so greasy, it was practically glowing." Now that she thought about it, Gu Xunwan couldn't figure out why she liked Wenjian so much. Sure, he was good-looking, but he had a sharp tongue and was the epitome of a typical straight man. Back when they were together, she once had severe menstrual cramps and called him from her dorm. He braved the cold to bring her brown sugar water. But besides the brown sugar water, he also brought a packet of acupuncture needles, earnestly suggesting, "Next time you have cramps, just poke these into the acupoints." At the time, Gu Xunwan was so deeply in love that she refrained from sticking those needles in his face. But after they broke up, she actually did something like that. She sneaked into his dorm and scattered a handful of embroidery needles under his bedsheet, fully intending to stab the shameless jerk to avenge her broken heart. Although Gu Xunwan used to resent Wenjuan to the point of gnashing her teeth, she didn't want to hold on to those grudges anymore, especially since he was now her primary doctor and her life was in his hands. She couldn't afford to be reckless. Gu Xunwan's parents lived in another city, but upon learning that she was injured, her mother, Mrs. Gu, rushed over to take care of her. When Wenjuan entered the hospital room, Mrs. Gu was peeling an apple for Gu Xunwan while scolding her. "I urged you to get married, not because I thought you couldn't find someone. Now look at you, broke your leg. Who's going to want you after this?" Gu Xunwan was initially letting her mother ramble, but the moment when John stepped into the room, she snapped to attention and quickly interrupted her mother. "Mom, what are you talking about? I went to catch the bouquet because I already have a boyfriend. I caught the bouquet, so the wedding is happening soon." When John's eyes darkened at her words as he silently approached her bedside. Back when Gu Xunwan and Wenjuan were dating, Mrs. Gu hadn't known about it, so she didn't recognize Wenjuan. However, she couldn't help but notice the handsome doctor who was treating her daughter. Gu Xunwan glanced at Wenjuan but ignored him, turning to her mother instead. "Mom, you don't believe me? I really do have a boyfriend." Before Mrs. Gu could respond, Wenjuan let out a cold chuckle, his tone indifferent. "Miss Gu, you've been hospitalized for several days now, and the only man who visited you was that balding boss on the first day. Is your boyfriend your boss?" "My boyfriend is just busy and doesn't have time to visit me," she retorted, somewhat childishly. But then she realized there was no point in arguing with him and huffed, turning away from him in a huff. As soon as Wenjuan left, Gu Xunwan called Sanyue, the most attractive guy in her company, asking him to pretend to be her boyfriend. But Sanyue refused. "Director Gu, you may be my boss, but you can't abuse your power. You're eager to get married, but I'm still a young, fresh guy. If you do this, you'll ruin my innocence." Gu Xunwan gritted her teeth. "Cut the nonsense. If you come, I'll help you get together with the receptionist." "Deal." The next day, Sanyue came by after work, and as luck would have it, he ran into Wenjuan at the hospital room door. A quick-witted as he was, Sanyue greeted Wenjuan first. "You must be Wenjuan's attending doctor, right? Nice to meet you. I'm her boyfriend, Sanyue." Sanyue extended his hand, but Wenjuan merely glanced at it and said, "No need for a handshake. I just finished surgery, and don't want to get blood on you." At first, the comment seemed innocent enough, but on second thought, it gave Sanyue pause. Whose blood? Did this former boyfriend of Gu Xunwan's have a ruthless streak? Sanyue began to regret taking on this role just to win over the receptionist. Wenjuan was there for a routine checkup, something that usually only took a few minutes. But today, he lingered, eventually pulling up a chair and sitting down as if he belonged there. Since there was only one chair in the room, Wenjuan took it, leaving Sanyue without a place to sit. Gu Xunwan patted the edge of her bed. "Come on, Sanyue, sit here." Just as Sanyue was about to sit down, Wenjuan stood up, grabbed him by the arm, and despite his objections, pushed him into the chair, taking a seat beside Gu Xunwan on the bed instead, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. Both Gu Xunwan and Sanyue couldn't help but twitch at the corners of their mouths. Noticing the hostility in Gu Xunwan's tone, Wenjuan raised an eyebrow slightly and asked her, "Do you really dislike me that much? I'm just curious about the guy who replaced me as your boyfriend." Gu Xunwan corrected him, "Ex-boyfriend." Having already been briefed by Gu Xunwan on the phone, Sanyue sensed the tension and chimed in. "So, you're the infamous ex, huh? Wenjuan told me she got cheated on by an old, shameless guy. I imagined someone else. I didn't expect you to be so young." Sanyue was 3 years younger than Gu Xunwan, and Wenjuan was a year older than her. So, Sanyue calling Wenjuan old wasn't entirely baseless. However, Wenjuan's face darkened upon hearing this. Wenjuan stayed in the hospital room for a while before a nurse called him away, saying another patient in a different room needed attention. Sanyue also stayed for about half an hour before leaving, but not without reminding her repeatedly, "Big sister, don't forget about my receptionist crush, okay?" Gu Xunwan promised him that as soon as her leg healed and she was back at work, she would play matchmaker for them. Only then did Sanyue leave with peace of mind. Gu Xunwan, who was staying in a private room, thought she would finally get some peace once everyone left. But just as Sanyue walked out the door, Wenjuan walked back in. The relief Gu Xunwan had felt moments ago quickly evaporated, and she snapped, "What are you doing back here?" Wenjuan, however, walked over to her with a serious expression and asked, "Who did you call an old man?" Gu Xunwan didn't respond, so he took a step closer. "And who did you say cheated?" "Whoever cheats is who I'm talking about." Gu Xunwan's tone was firm, though she instinctively leaned back a bit. In general, she was more assertive around men, but with one leg out of commission, she would be at a severe disadvantage if Wenjuan got angry and resorted to violence. "So, Gu Xunwan, you broke up with me because you thought I cheated?" Gu Xunwan let out a cold snort, her tone even more hostile. "At least you're self-aware." Her words were meant to mock Wenjuan, but instead he smiled. Gu Xunwan had never encountered such a shameless man before. He was being accused of cheating, yet here he was, grinning like it was no big deal. Remembering the hurt and frustration from the past, Gu Xunwan's eyes reddened, and with her free hand, she slapped Wenjuan across the face. "Get out." And surprisingly, Wenjuan actually left, covering his face, looking oddly pleased. Gu Xunwan sighed and rubbed her forehead. What a shameless man. Maybe it was the stress of dealing with Wenjuan before bed, but that night, Gu Xunwan dreamt about the moment she first caught Wenjuan cheating. Wenjuan had been her senior in university. They started dating at the end of her freshman year and stayed together until her junior year, when Wenjuan was preparing to graduate. Everything had been going well, and their relationship seemed solid. Gu Xunwan had even considered marrying Wenjuan after graduation. But life had other plans. Wenjuan cheated before she could even graduate. The first sign came during the rainy season. That day, Gu Xunwan was reading in the library. When she stepped outside, it was raining. Since Wenjuan's dorm was nearby, she texted him, asking if he could come pick her up. He replied that he was busy and didn't have time. Gu Xunwan wasn't the type to make a fuss, so she decided to wait for the rain to stop before heading back, standing at the library entrance. Not long after, she saw Wenjuan walking past the library with another girl, sharing an umbrella. They quickly disappeared into the rain, never noticing her standing on the library steps. Gu Xunwan stood there, watching them leave, feeling a knot in her chest. She ended up walking back to her dorm in the rain, surprising her roommates who exclaimed, "Why didn't you call us to pick you up? And where's your handsome one?" Gu Xunwan didn't respond, dazed. She didn't drink the hot water they brought her, took a shower, and went to bed with her hair still wet. The next day, she woke up with a cold. Wenjuan called, but she was too upset to answer. Then, Wenjuan didn't call again. For half a month, he disappeared completely. Lying in bed with her cold, Gu Xunwan kept thinking it might have been a misunderstanding. Maybe Wenjuan really was busy when he texted her and only helped the other girl later. But that thought quickly crumbled. If he wasn't busy, and even walked by the library, why couldn't he come to pick her up? He didn't even care when she was sick. The more Gu Xunwan thought about it, the angrier she became. When Wenjuan finally came to see her, she greeted him with a cold expression. Wenjuan coaxed her for a long time before she finally sighed and said, "That day at the library, I saw you using the umbrella I gave you to walk that girl home." Gu Xunwan thought that if Wenjuan offered even the slightest explanation, she might be willing to forgive and forget. But instead, Wenjuan looked surprised. "You saw that?" His expression confirmed everything, and whatever hope Gu Xunwan had left shattered completely. She didn't cause a scene, but in the days that followed, Wenjuan still didn't reach out to her. When they did occasionally cross paths, he was always with that same girl. Gu Xunwan's heart grew colder. She had always been a proud girl, and Wenjuan's behavior felt like emotional neglect, pushing her toward breaking up with him. So, just before Wenjuan's graduation, Gu Xunwan ended things. She didn't have the courage to do it face-to-face, so she sent him a text message and blocked him on all platforms before he could even reply. Afraid of the awkwardness of running into him at school, Gu Xunwan took a leave of absence and stayed away for a long time, like a turtle hiding in its shell. Only after Wenjuan and his classmates graduated did she return to campus. She refused to be the kind of foolish woman who would cry and beg after being abandoned. Even though she loved him deeply, if he no longer cared for her, she wouldn't force it. In her memories, she was so strong, but now, under the covers, Gu Xunwan bit her blanket and cried through the night, pretending she didn't care because she knew she couldn't have him. The brave warrior by day, only daring to turn her blanket into armor and cry secretly at night. When Gu Xunwan woke up the next day and saw her puffy eyes in the mirror, she hated Wenjuan even more. When Wenjuan came to check on her, Gu Xunwan rolled her eyes so hard it hurt, and Wenjuan, unable to bear it, reached out to cover her eyes. "If you keep rolling them like that, you'll go blind." Gu Xunwan slapped his hand away, snapping, "I wish I would go blind, so I wouldn't have to see scum like you." Hearing her call him scum, Wenjuan sighed helplessly. "Nuanyuan, if I wasn't the scum you think I am, would you still have broken up with me?" "Scum is scum. There are no ifs. And who said you could call me Nuanyuan?" Seeing her about to explode, Wenjuan wisely shut his mouth any further, and there would be no way to salvage the situation. After finishing his checkup, Wenjuan left, but Gu Xunwan was still fuming. It had been years since they broke up, and yet here he was, acting all clingy. She waited until after Sanyue finished work, then called him, asking him to come over and continue pretending to be her boyfriend. Sanyue had originally planned to have dinner with friends after work, but thinking about the receptionist he had a crush on, he turned his car around and headed to the hospital where Gu Xunwan was staying. When Sanyue arrived, Wenjuan was already sitting by Gu Xunwan's bedside. But Gu Xunwan ignored Wenjuan. When Sanyue walked in, holding the fruits she had asked him to buy, he cheerfully announced, "Nuanyuan, I brought your favorite fruits." Before he could finish, Wenjuan glanced at the bag in Sanyue's hand, frowning. "She can't eat mangoes." Sanyue was startled by Wenjuan's stern tone. After a moment, he stammered, "Who said that?" "Nuanyuan loves mangoes. She grabs them first at every company gathering. She likes them but can't eat them because she's allergic. Mangoes cause her to break out in hives, but she's a glutton who occasionally sneaks some despite the risk." Wenjuan, dressed in a white coat with a white shirt underneath, looked as pristine as freshly fallen snow, his gaze sharp and cold. "As her boyfriend, I thought you would know this." Sanyue was at a loss for words. He glanced at Gu Xunwan, who was also looking a bit exasperated. Wenjuan continued, "As her boyfriend, you should know what she likes to eat, what she doesn't, what she loves but can't have, and what she hates but must eat." Gu Xunwan and Sanyue exchanged awkward glances, the atmosphere becoming somewhat tense. Having said his piece, Wenjuan didn't linger. He gave Gu Xunwan a meaningful look before leaving. Sanyue stood at the door, watching Wenjuan walk away before eagerly scurrying over to Gu Xunwan's bedside. "Nuanyuan, I don't think Wenjuan is the scumbag you say he is. On the contrary, he seems to care about you quite a lot." Gu Xunwan gritted her teeth in frustration. "Sanyue, whose side are you on? Do you still want to make progress with that receptionist you like?" Only then did Sanyue obediently fall silent. However, the next day, when Gu Xunwan called Sanyue again, he didn't show up. She tried to threaten him with the receptionist, but this time, he surprisingly stood his ground. "Nuanyuan, I've realized that if I want happiness, I have to fight for myself." Gu Xunwan sighed and hung up the phone, feeling helpless. Meanwhile, on the other end, after hanging up, Sanyue looked up at Wenjuan, who was sitting across from him, and smiled obsequiously. "Bro, you weren't kidding. Our company's receptionist really is your neighbor?" Wenjuan nodded. "So, as a favor in return, shouldn't you tell me about Gu Xunwan?" Sanyue nodded eagerly. "Of course. Poor Gu Xunwan had no idea that someone was digging into her past. That night, she was drifting in and out of sleep on her hospital bed when she felt someone climb into bed beside her. Startled, she was about to scream when the person wrapped their arms around her from behind and snuggled into her. A soft voice whispered, "It's me." It was Wenjuan. Gu Xunwan's tense nerves relaxed, but she still pushed him away. "Wenjuan, enough is enough. We ended things a long time ago." But Wenjuan only held her tighter. "That's just your wishful thinking. The breakup you mentioned was only your decision. I never agreed to it." Despite her love for him, Gu Xunwan's heart softened at his words. But something was still blocking her from fully embracing her feelings for Wenjuan. Sensing that she was about to push him away again, Wenjuan leaned in close, his lips brushing against her ear. "Nuanyuan, I don't want to break up with you. I didn't then, I don't now, and I won't in the future. That day, when you saw me walking that girl back to her dorm, I really didn't know you were waiting for me at the library. I was busy in the lab, and the message you sent me got deleted by that girl before I could see it. When I left the lab, it was raining, so I just walked her back. I never realized you were upset because of that." Hearing the long-buried misunderstanding explained like this, Gu Xunwan was suddenly at a loss for how to react. Should she break down in tears, or should she curl up in Wenjuan's arms and sob, apologizing for misunderstanding him? She sat there, dazed, before finally responding with a faint, "Oh." Wenjuan nuzzled into the crook of her neck, his short hair brushing against her skin, sending a tingling sensation through her that made her stiffen. "That time was so hectic with graduation, and then you suddenly told me we were breaking up and disappeared. Graduation, work, and the breakup, it all weighed on me so heavily I could barely breathe. I even thought about giving up on you, but in the end, I chose to stay in the city where you are. Today, I asked that girl about what happened back then. When she told me the truth, I felt such relief. So, it turns out you didn't break up with me because you stopped loving me." Gu Xunwan gave a small, bitter laugh. "So what? We're broken up anyway. It's not the same. If you didn't love me anymore, no matter how hard I tried, you wouldn't come back. But if it was just a misunderstanding, then we can clear it up and keep loving each other." Gu Xunwan felt a lump in her throat, her eyes starting to well up. She still loved him to death. Every time she woke in the middle of the night, it was him she thought of. She was also relieved, so it was all just a misunderstanding, and he hadn't stopped loving her after all. But her pride got the best of her. Though she was deeply moved, she still put on a front, acting nonchalant. "Who said I'm going to get back together with you?" Wenjuan chuckled softly, gently nudging her injured leg with his own. "You better get back together with me, or I'll break your other leg too." Gu Xunwan was speechless. All the emotions she had just felt evaporated, and she mustered all her strength to push Wenjuan off the bed. "Get out." Gu Xunwan had been lying in the hospital for a while. Her leg injury wasn't too severe, so she decided to use crutches to go handle her discharge paperwork. Word had spread throughout the hospital about Gu Xunwan's relationship with Wenjuan. The young nurse who was attending to her looked troubled, worried that if she let Gu Xunwan go, Wenjuan would be upset. As Gu Xunwan was pleading with the nurse, Wenjuan appeared. He stood behind her, making it very clear to everyone around by casually wrapping an arm around her waist, smiling warmly. "Getting discharged? Going home. I don't want to see you again." Gu Xunwan expected Wenjuan to be angry, but instead, he nodded. "All right, let's go. Remember, a bone injury takes 100 days to heal. Make sure you rest well at home." She couldn't figure out what he was up to, but in front of him, she still went through with the discharge formalities. Her colleague was waiting for her at the door, and after grabbing her things, she bid farewell to the hospital and Wenjuan. As Gu Xunwan walked away, the young nurse couldn't help but ask Wenjuan, "Dr. Wen, you're just letting her leave like that?" "I know her home address, her colleague's address, her company, and the coffee shop she frequents. I even know which bus she takes to work when she doesn't drive. Letting her go doesn't really change anything, does it?" When John paused, then added with a smile, "Besides, the hospital isn't exactly the best place for romance. Wenjuan still looked pristine in his white lab coat, as spotless as snow. But the young nurse couldn't shake the feeling that this doctor was more like a big bad wolf toying with a little white rabbit. Gentle and refined to outsiders, but cunning and devious with his beloved. Back at work, Gu Xunwan hobbled into the office on her crutches, only to discover that Sanyue had gotten quite close with the receptionist. Upon inquiry, she found out that the receptionist was actually Wenjuan's neighbor. The receptionist had always harbored feelings for Sanyue but found him too carefree and unreliable. But with Wenjuan's intervention, the two had finally gotten together. The receptionist had always been on good terms with Gu Xunwan, but now she seemed to have switched sides. Watching them act all lovey-dovey, Gu Xunwan felt like the whole world had abandoned her. Noticing Gu Xunwan's mood, the receptionist brought a small cake to her office during lunch. Nuanyuan, the receptionist called sweetly. Traitor. Gu Xunwan snorted, showing her disinterest. The receptionist still walked over and placed the cake on Gu Xunwan's desk. Nuanyuan, are you still mad at Wenjuan? Didn't he explain everything to you? It was all a misunderstanding. Gu Xunwan's attention was entirely on the cake, not hearing a word the receptionist said. Seeing no response, the receptionist grew nervous and quickly added, Nuanyuan, Wenjuan really likes you. I live right next to him, and I've never seen any other women around him. One Valentine's Day, I saw him alone and jokingly asked why he didn't have a girlfriend. He said he did, but it seemed she didn't like him anymore. Gu Xunwan kept eyeing the cake, planning to take a big bite once the receptionist left. The receptionist continued, Another time, I saw him come home drunk, carried back by a friend. Even then, he was mumbling your name, Nuanyuan Nuanyuan, like he was in so much pain. You should just get back together with him. This was only half true. Wenjuan had indeed been drunk, but he had been sitting at his doorstep, crying incoherently. He hadn't actually said Gu Xunwan's name, or else the receptionist would have known long ago that Gu Xunwan was his ex. But such an embarrassing story was something Wenjuan would never let her reveal. Gu Xunwan's hand was already reaching for the cake when the receptionist, thinking she hadn't gotten through, was about to continue speaking. But Gu Xunwan finally responded, I don't actually mind getting back together with him. It's just that he threatened to break my leg if I didn't agree. That's clearly blackmail. If I agreed right then, wouldn't I lose all my dignity? So, I'm just stalling for a bit. I'll say yes after I go for a follow-up at the hospital in a few days. The receptionist, delighted, finally left. After finishing the cake, Gu Xunwan found herself unable to calm down. Her mind kept replaying the image of Wenjuan drunkenly calling her name. The more she thought about it, the more a smile crept onto her face, sweeter than the cake she had just eaten. What should she do? She really wanted to see him. Gu Xunwan spent the entire afternoon wrestling with her feelings, but in the end, she couldn't contain her excitement. She pulled out her phone and sent Wenjuan a text message. Let's get back together. After sending the message, she waited for over 10 minutes with no reply. Growing impatient, she decided to call him, but no one answered. He must be in surgery, she thought. Even though she knew he would respond as soon as the surgery was over, she couldn't help herself and hobbled to the hospital on her crutches. As soon as she reached the entrance to Wenjuan's office, she saw a crowd gathered. Doctors, nurses, and even patients were there watching something. When Gu Xunwan got closer, she realized it was the boyfriend of the woman who had just undergone surgery. Having heard that his girlfriend might need an amputation, he was furious and had come to confront Wenjuan. Wenjuan had just finished the surgery and looked visibly tired, which made Gu Xunwan's heart ache. Despite the man's aggressive behavior, Wenjuan remained silent, quietly enduring the confrontation. Seeing that Wenjuan wasn't fighting back, the man got even more enraged and seemed ready to throw a punch. Gu Xunwan couldn't take it anymore. She pushed through the crowd and swung her crutch at the man's leg when he wasn't looking. Wenjuan was startled to see Gu Xunwan suddenly appear. He froze for a moment, then watched as the man, infuriated by Gu Xunwan's strike, raised his fist at her. Without thinking, Wenjun pulled her into his arms, taking the punch on his back. Just then, the hospital security arrived and pulled the man away. The punch was heavy, and Wenjun winced in pain, which only made Gu Xunwan angrier. She poked her head out from Wenjun's embrace and shouted at the man. "Enough! I understand you're worried about your girlfriend, and that's perfectly fine, but you shouldn't be taking it out on others, especially not on my boyfriend. We've been apart for years, and we were just about to get back together. But because of your girlfriend's surgery, he didn't even have time to reply to my message. Why is it that the one person I can't bully has to suffer from your outburst?" Before she could finish, Gu Xunwan started choking up. The man, now subdued by the security, also quieted down, while Gu Xunwan clung to Wenjun's white coat, sobbing in front of everyone. Before her tears could escalate further, Wenjun half-carried her into his office. The young nurse outside, sensing the situation, discreetly dispersed the crowd. Inside the office, Gu Xunwan finally let out all her pent-up frustration, crying uncontrollably as she clung to Wenjun's coat, using it to wipe her tears. Sitting on a chair, she saw Wenjun kneeling slightly in front of her, gazing at her gently. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "I'm wearing a white coat, so I can't fight for you, but I can take the punches for you." Gu Xunwan continued crying, and after a while, she hiccuped through her tears. "I sent you a text. Did you see it?" Wenjun made a sound of acknowledgement, then pulled out his phone. Sure enough, there was the message from Gu Xunwan, asking to get back together. He smiled, cupped her face in his hands, and kissed her. When they finally broke apart, he leaned close to her ear, whispering in a low, mesmerizing voice, "All right, we'll get back together. We'll never break up again." Gu Xunwan sniffled. "Are you still going to break my leg?" Wenjun shook his head. "No, I wouldn't dare. From now on, if I do anything wrong, you can break my leg instead. I promise I won't resist." Finally, Gu Xunwan smiled through her tears. They say that after a storm comes a rainbow. Fortunately, after all the storms they had weathered, they found each other again at the end of the rainbow. From this day forward, the decades to come will be a journey they walk together.